My name is Elijah Vinson. I'm 68 years old, and I live right here in Augusta, Georgia. I worked my whole life as a master leather craftsman, a boot maker, making custom riding boots, high-end belts, and all sorts of bespoke leather goods for clients all over the South. But it's not the smell of cured leather or the precision of my stitching that I want to talk about today. What I'm going to share with you is something that still chills my blood when I remember it. It's about how my own son saved me from certain death. A death planned by the woman I thought was the love of my life. Welcome to Bradley's Stories. I share new life stories here every day, and I'd really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now, let's jump back into my story. I'm sure you'll love it if you keep listening till the end. You know, there are moments in a person's life when everything changes in the blink of an eye. 1 second, you're living your routine, believing you know the people around you. And the next, well, you realize you were sleeping next to someone capable of taking your life without flinching. It was a Sunday just like any other when it all started. We were gathered for our traditional family dinner, with that good smell of smoked brisket, collard greens, and corn pudding. The kind of soul food only folks from the central Georgia heartland know how to make right. My son, Miles, from my first marriage, looked uneasy. The whole meal, I noticed he barely touched his plate. I knew my boy too well not to realize something serious was going on. His eyes kept avoiding my wife Serena's. We'd been married for 6 years. Lord, have mercy, I thought to myself, did they fight again? It wouldn't have been the first time. Serena was 15 years younger than me, and from the start, her relationship with my son had its ups and downs. After dinner, while Serena was in the kitchen washing dishes, Miles approached me on the patio, where I was trimming the avocado tree. His hands were trembling when he pulled a manila envelope from his pocket. "Dad," he said, his voice ragged, "I need you to trust me now more than ever." He looked around, making sure we were alone. "Take this envelope, but don't open it here. You need to go home now. Pack a small bag with just the essentials and leave. Then call me." I was completely lost. I tried to question him, but he insisted. "Please, Dad, it's urgent. It's a matter of life or death. I can't explain now. She might see us." He hugged me tight, the way he hadn't since he was a child. "I love you, Dad. Please, just go. Trust me." His look, I'll never forget it. It was fear. It was love. It was sheer desperation. I slipped the envelope into my pocket, my heart hammering. I made up some quick excuse for Serena, saying I needed to check on a sick friend, and walked out. The whole drive home, that envelope felt like it was burning a hole in my jeans. What could my son have discovered that was so serious? When I got home, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely tear the envelope open. And it was right then, alone in the hallway of the house I'd worked so hard to build, that I discovered the woman who hummed while serving me coffee every morning was planning to have me killed. If you've ever felt your world shatter in an instant, drop a like for this old heart. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my next life stories. And tell me in the comments where you're watching this video from and what time it is right now. It makes this old heart so happy to know what corner of the country is listening in. You know, I never imagined I'd be here to tell this story. I never imagined the son from my first marriage would be the one to save my life from my last love. My childhood in Augusta was poor, but full of joy. I grew up surrounded by the smell of leather and the sight of needles in the small shop my daddy kept in the back of our house. We were a family like so many others in that part of Georgia. Hard-working, God-fearing, with the normal struggles of people living in the heartland. The hardship was real, but we always managed with courage, like my daddy used to say. From a young age, I learned that life doesn't give you anything for free. I watched my father wake up before the sun to prepare the hides, to serve the high-end clients who came from far away looking for a good boot or a durable saddle. I stayed there, watching his mastery, how he transformed that raw material into pieces of beauty and functionality. Elijah, my son, with leather as in life, the secret is knowing where to apply firmness and where to allow flexibility, he taught me as he worked. My mother, Mama Jo, Josephine, was a strong woman. One of those women who was up before dawn, making coffee, looking after the house, helping with the delicate needlework in the shop, and still had the energy to tell stories to me and my siblings at the end of the day. From her, I learned the value of family, respect, and honesty. A man without his word ain't worth the boots he's wearing, she'd repeat all the time. In school, I wasn't the best student. I preferred helping my father in the shop over sitting down to learn things that, in my young mind, wouldn't do me any good. It was at the town church where I met Aisha, my first love and the mother of my Miles. She had the brightest eyes I'd ever seen, dark hair that shone under the southern sun, and a smile that lit up the whole square. Our courtship was like most back then, respectful, always with family nearby, full of hidden glances and notes passed during Sunday service. When I married Aisha, I was barely old enough to grow a proper mustache. I rented a simple house near my father's shop and started working full-time. It was in that house that Miles was born on a rainy day, which the whole neighborhood celebrated as a good omen. Rain in the South is always a blessing. Fatherhood caught me by surprise. I held that boy in my arms and felt a mix of pride and fear. How was I, a boy who barely knew how to take care of himself, going to raise a human being? But Miles brought a different light into our home. Watching that child grow, take his first steps, say his first words, there's no money in the world that can pay for that. Life continued its calm course until the troubles began. Modernization started reaching the heartland, and with it, cheaper, mass-produced items that undercut my handmade leatherwork. Orders started to slow down, and with that, the money at home did too. Aisha and I began to argue more frequently. The love that once seemed eternal gave way to worry, exhaustion, and resentment. When Miles was 8 years old, I decided we needed a change. I opened my own leather shop in a more central part of town, betting I could win back the clientele. I worked from sunup until late at night, leaving Aisha alone with our boy more and more. She complained about my absence. She said I was more married to my work than to her. I argued that everything I did was to give our family a better future. I didn't realize, in my stubbornness, that while trying to secure the future, I was losing the present. Family meals became rare, conversations shorter, and smiles fewer. Aisha tried to warn me several times, but I, proud as I was, thought I was on the right track. This is just a phase, woman. Things will get better soon, and I'll have more time, I'd say, failing to realize that time is exactly what you can't get back. One stormy night, I returned home and found only a note on the kitchen table. Aisha had left, taking Miles with her. She wrote that she couldn't stand living with a man who was only physically present, who had become a stranger in his own home. That night was the longest of my life. I sat on the kitchen floor with the crumpled note in my hands and cried as I had never cried before. In the months that followed, I lived like a ghost. The leather shop, which had once been my priority, didn't matter so much anymore. I found out Aisha had moved to Atlanta to live with an aunt. I tried to contact her, begging for another chance, but she was decided. The divorce was inevitable, and we agreed Miles would spend one weekend a month with me. Those weekends became my only source of joy. I tried hard to be a present father from a distance. We talked about everything, from his school classes to his dreams for the future. In time, the pain of separation gave way to a resigned acceptance. Aisha and I managed to establish a cordial relationship for our son's sake. The years passed, Miles grew up, and I immersed myself in work. My shop managed to adapt to the new times, offering exclusive, custom pieces that attracted not only traditional collectors, but also tourists and modern buyers. Solitude, however, was a constant companion, until I met Serena in my middle age. She appeared at my shop looking for a handmade leather bag for a gift. Chatty and cheerful, she seemed to bring the sunshine inside with her easy smile. Serena was a school teacher in the local county school, originally from Charlotte, North Carolina. She was so different from Aisha, so full of life. When she left the shop that day, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: the desire to see someone again. It was at that moment, watching Serena cross the street, that I didn't realize fate was preparing the biggest test of my life. How could I have imagined that sweet smile hid a soul capable of the most terrible schemes? How could I have known that years later I'd be opening an envelope that contained proof she planned to kill me? I ran into Serena by chance at the big annual church festival. I was helping set up the vendor booths, stringing up colorful tarps to give folks some shade. She showed up with a group of her students, organizing a presentation of folk dances. Our eyes met, and she walked right over to me with that smile I'd later discover was her best weapon. "The bootmaker, right? So good to see you here," she said with that expansive way only charming Southern folks have. "Please, call me Elijah," I replied, feeling strangely nervous, like a young man again. We talked about the festival, about the town, and how she was settling into life in the heartland. Before I knew it, the sun was going down, and I'd spent hours talking to her, more hours than I'd spent talking to anyone in a long, long time. Serena had a gift for making anyone feel special. She asked about my leather work with genuine interest. She told funny stories about her students. She spoke of her childhood in North Carolina with a vividness I loved. In my loneliness as a divorced man, that attention was like water in the desert. We started meeting more often. First with excuses. I'd stop by the school, offering to teach the students some leather crafting. She'd show up at the shop looking for materials for school projects. Soon the pretexts were abandoned. Simple dinners at the only restaurant in town, walks around the square at sunset, conversations that stretched late into the night. Miles, now a young man, visited less often, busy with college in Atlanta. When he heard about Serena, he seemed happy for me, though with a certain reserve. "Dad, you deserve to be happy, but take it slow, okay?" he advised during one of his visits. At the time, I took it as the natural jealousy of a son who'd only seen his father alone after the separation. I little knew that his protective instinct would end up being my salvation. The courtship with Serena was like a whirlwind in my quiet life. She convinced me to update my wardrobe, to try different foods, to travel, to see other cities in the U.S. "You've been stuck in time too long, old man," she'd say, laughing at my initial resistance to change. And I, mesmerized by that vibrant woman, let myself be carried away. When we hit 1 year together, I proposed during a dinner in Atlanta, where we had traveled specially. I'd saved for months to buy a simple but beautiful ring. She cried. She said I was the man she had always waited for, that she would be the best wife a man could wish for. I believed every word. Why wouldn't I? We married in a simple ceremony at the church where we met. Miles came and was my best man. I remember his gaze during the reception, watching Serena carefully as she mingled with the guests. At the time, I thought he was still getting used to the idea of having a stepmother. I didn't realize that my son, always observant, was already noticing something my love-blind eyes couldn't see. The first few years of marriage were happy, at least in my eyes. We turned the house where I lived alone into a home. Serena continued teaching. I dedicated myself to the leather shop, which was thriving thanks to a renewed interest in traditional craftsmanship. On weekends, we hosted friends for a barbecue on the patio, or went to Cousin Bessie's house to play cards and eat her deep dish peach cobbler, which she made just right. It was when I started thinking about retirement that things began to change subtly. Serena suggested we get a life insurance policy to secure the future, as she put it. She insisted I go to the doctor regularly, worried about my health. You're not a young man anymore, my love. Mountain men are stubborn. They don't take care of their health, and then problems come later, she argued. And how could I argue? She seemed like nothing more than a concerned wife. Miles graduated with a business degree and started working for a firm in Atlanta. He visited less, always with the excuse of a demanding job. When he did come, he seemed uncomfortable in Serena's presence, and their conversations were always overly polite, artificial. It was a situation I chose to ignore, attributing it to personality differences. During one of those visits, Miles called me aside to talk. Dad, has Ms. Serena asked you about the value of the shop, about how much you earn, about your assets? The question caught me off guard, and I answered defensively. Come on, son. She's my wife. Of course, we talk about those things. He stayed quiet, but I saw in his eyes that he wasn't convinced. I just want you to be careful, he finally said. That conversation disturbed me more than I let on. I started paying attention to small details I'd previously ignored. How Serena always answered her cell phone in the bathroom or outside the house. How she insisted I increase the value of the life insurance policy, naming her as the sole beneficiary. How interested she was in every financial aspect of my business. One night, I woke up thirsty and went downstairs for water. I heard her voice outside, talking on the phone in a low tone. No, it's not the time yet. I need to make sure everything is correct. Yes, the value is considerable. Don't worry, he doesn't suspect a thing. When she noticed me, she hung up quickly. Just a friend having marital problems. She explained naturally. I wanted to believe her. Doubt, however, is like a silent moth, quietly eating away at you until the entire structure is compromised. I started questioning everything. Why would a young, attractive woman like Serena choose a simple bootmaker from the heartland? A man already at the age where the body starts showing the signs of time? Was what she felt really love, or was there something else? I was never a man to distrust people, much less to check a person's belongings. But that morning, while Serena was at school, something compelled me to look at her cell phone, which she'd left on the nightstand. I didn't find anything incriminating, which made me feel both relieved and ashamed of my suspicion. I decided to talk to her, to lay my concerns on the table. That night, after dinner, I tried to approach the subject. Serena, Sometimes I wonder what you saw in me, an old bootmaker without great possessions, other than the shop and this house." She reacted with indignation. "How can you doubt my love? Everything I did was for us to protect our future." I ended up apologizing, feeling guilty for distrusting someone who clearly cared about me. In the following weeks, Serena became even more attentive and affectionate. She prepared my favorite dishes. She organized a surprise dinner with friends for my birthday. She showed increasing interest in my daily routine. My suspicions began to fade, replaced by the shame of having doubted someone who clearly cared for me. It was around that time that Miles started visiting more often, always finding pretexts to show up unannounced. On one of those visits, he overheard a conversation between Serena and someone on the phone. He later told me she was talking about resolving the problem and making sure it looks natural. He didn't tell me anything at the time, but he began his own silent investigation. Meanwhile, I lived divided between the distrust I tried to repress and the love I still felt for Serena. Doubt is a heavy burden, and I wasn't young anymore to carry such weights. I chose to believe the best, pushing my suspicions to the back of my mind. What proof did I have, beyond vague impressions and coincidences? It was the Sunday of that family dinner when the truth came to light, hidden in a manila envelope that my son handed to me with trembling hands. An envelope that carried not only the evidence of Serena's betrayal, but the proof that the woman with whom I shared my bed planned to send me to the grave. "Don't open it here. Go home urgently and pack your bags." Miles's words echoed in my head as I drove home, my heart racing as if it wanted to escape my chest. What could be so serious that it demanded immediate flight? What terrible secret had my son uncovered? The fear of the unknown is sometimes worse than the harshest truth. But nothing could have prepared me for what I found in that envelope, for the revelation that would make my world crumble like a sandcastle hit by the tide. With shaking hands, I tore the envelope open as soon as I got home. Inside, I found several printed pages, screenshots of conversations, bank statements, and a handwritten letter from Miles. I started to read, and every word was like a knife twisting in my gut. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was there, undeniable, cruel in its clarity. The first page showed a text exchange between Serena and an unknown number. "It has to be tonight," she wrote. "I put enough in his Sunday supper. The pharmacist swore it'll look like a heart attack. No one will suspect a thing." The reply came immediately. "You sure the policy is valid yet?" "Yes, it's for $2 million. Enough for us to live easy for a long, long time." My stomach flipped. I remembered how she had insisted on increasing the value of the policy just a few months ago. "It's for our future," she'd said. "You never know what might happen." And I, a trusting fool, had agreed, thinking it was just the caution of a worried wife. The next page showed a bank statement with a transfer of $50,000 to an unknown account. The description only said, "Service advance." What kind of service would cost that much? The date coincided with a week when Serena claimed to have gone to visit a sick cousin in Charlotte. She returned 2 days later, saying the cousin was better. Another lie. There was also the transcription of an audio seemingly recorded by Miles. "All set for tonight," Serena was saying to someone. "I already mixed a small dose into his breakfast coffee, just to start weakening his heart. Tonight I'll give him the rest. The pharmacist guaranteed it will look natural, like his heart just stopped. An old man like him, no one will suspect." I let the papers fall to the floor. My legs gave out, and I sank heavily into the living room armchair. The same armchair where Serena had so often sat on my lap, where we exchanged kisses and promises I believed. The betrayal was painful, but knowing the woman I loved was planning to kill me, that was beyond my comprehension. Miles' letter explained everything. Dad, I've been suspicious of Ms. Serena for months. I started noticing changes in her behavior. Strange questions about your assets, about the insurance. Yesterday, while you were at the shop, I came to your house to pick up those documents you asked for. Serena didn't know I was here. I heard her on the phone in the bathroom talking about the plan and how you wouldn't make it past tonight. I stayed hidden and recorded part of the conversation. After she left, I checked her phone, which was charging in the living room. I found conversations with someone saved only as D. I took pictures of everything. I also found suspicious bank transfers while checking the statements for the documents you requested. Dad, she is planning to kill you tonight. I've already spoken to a friend who is a detective. He advised you to leave the house immediately. Please take only the essentials and go to the address I wrote on the back. It's a hotel in Savannah, Georgia, about 2 hours from here. I will be waiting. Don't come back home. Call me as soon as you're on the road. I love you, Dad. Trust me. I stayed paralyzed for a few minutes, trying to process it all. How could Serena, the woman who claimed to love me, who took care of me when I caught a cold, who knew exactly how I liked my coffee in the morning, be planning something so terrible? Had everything been a lie from the start? Our moments of intimacy, the shared laughter, the plans for the future, all an act to lead up to this moment. I looked at the clock. Serena would be back from school in less than an hour. There was no time to sink into pain or confusion. I had to act. With a broken heart and still trembling hands, I started gathering some clothes and essentials into a small bag. I took my documents, some cash I kept hidden in the back of the closet, and the car keys. Before leaving, I took one last look at that house that had been my home, our home. The curtains Serena had chosen, the photos of our wedding on the shelf, the handmade quilt Cousin Bessie had given us. It was as if I were seeing everything for the first time, or perhaps the last. Every object now seemed part of an elaborate lie, a stage set for a macabre play, where I was the unknowing victim. On the way to Savannah, I called Miles as he had requested. My voice was choked. I could barely form complete sentences. Dad, thank God, he said when he answered. Are you all right? Are you on the road yet? I confirmed I was, trying to keep the car on the road as tears blurred my vision. Son, why? Was all I could ask. I don't know, Dad. I don't know what's in her head, but we'll find out. The important thing now is that you're safe. The road to Savannah never seemed so long. Every mile was accompanied by a new wave of torturous thoughts, memories of the start of our relationship, how Serena seemed genuinely interested in me, how her smile brightened my days. Could it all have been calculated from the beginning? When exactly did love, if it ever existed, give way to greed and coldness? When I arrived at the hotel, Miles was already waiting in the parking lot. As soon as he saw me, he ran to the car and hugged me hard when I stepped out. We didn't exchange words right away. They weren't necessary. My son's hug communicated everything. Relief, worry, love. Finally, he stepped back, held me by the shoulders, and looked me in the eyes. Are you okay, Dad? She didn't suspect anything. I shook my head. I don't think she realized. I left right after dinner. I told her I needed to handle something at the shop. Miles looked satisfied. Perfect. Come on, let's go inside. My friend Detective Sterling is on his way. He'll explain what we do next. In the simple hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed, physically and emotionally exhausted. Miles brought me a glass of water and sat beside me. Dad, I know it's hard to believe, but when I started putting the pieces together, the questions about the insurance, the hidden calls, the money, it all made sense. He hesitated, then continued. I think she has a lover, probably that D from the messages. They planned it together. The pain of the betrayal, coupled with the threat to my life, was almost unbearable. 6 years, son. 6 years sharing a life with someone who deep down wanted me dead. The tears came, inevitable. I hadn't cried like that since the separation from Aisha, but this time was different. That grief had been clean, honest. This was corrupted by betrayal, deceit, and cruelty. Miles's friend, Detective Sterling, arrived an hour later. Middle-aged man with a serious expression, he sat with us and explained the situation. Mr. Vinson, we have enough evidence to open an investigation, but we need more for an arrest. The strategy now is to set a trap. He looked directly at me. I know I'm asking a lot of you, but we'll need your help. What do I need to do? I asked, feeling a mix of fear and determination. I was never a man to run from a problem, not even one as terrible as this. We're going to set up an operation. You go back home tomorrow, acting normally. We'll say you had to travel unexpectedly to deal with a supplier issue. We'll install hidden cameras in your house, mainly in the kitchen, and microphones. When she puts something in your food, we'll have concrete proof. Miles protested immediately. Isn't that too risky? What if she realizes? What if she tries something different? The detective raised his hands, calming him. We'll have agents nearby. Your father will never truly be in danger, and he won't eat or drink anything she offers him. The idea of going back to that house, of looking into the eyes of the woman who planned to kill me, pretending not to know anything, was terrifying. But I also felt a growing determination. I wanted answers. I wanted to look her in the eye and understand how someone could fake love for so long when there was only evil in their heart. I'll do it, I finally said, surprising even myself with the firmness in my voice. If it's the only way to be sure, to get concrete proof, I'll do it. That night in the hotel room, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining Serena in our house, perhaps worried about my absence, perhaps frustrated that her plans had been postponed, or worse, perhaps relieved not to have to dirty her hands, thinking I had suffered the so-called heart attack somewhere else. The woman I knew, or thought I knew, no longer existed. In her place was a stranger, a skilled actress, who had played the role of a loving wife while planning my end. My phone rang several times during the night. It was Serena calling. Following the detective's advice, I didn't answer. Miles sent her a text from my phone, saying I was solving problems with a supplier in Savannah, where the cell service was spotty, and I'd be back the next day. She replied quickly, saying she was worried and missed me. Every word now seemed poisonous, part of a bigger lie. Lying in that strange bed, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, a certainty formed within me. Nothing in my life would ever be the same after this day. Even if I survived this trial, even if Serena was punished for her intentions, something fundamental had been broken. Trust, not just in her, but in my own ability to judge people, was shattered. The worst part wasn't knowing I was almost murdered. The worst was realizing that for years I truly loved someone who was only pretending to love me. That every "I love you" from her had been a calculated lie. Every caress, an act with a macabre objective. How could I ever believe anyone again after this? When dawn finally broke, I got up, exhausted but determined. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. Red eyes, deep circles, my gray hair disheveled. "You'll make it, old man," I told my reflection. "You've faced the cold, the poverty, the disappointment. You'll face this too." The plan was set. I would return home as if nothing had happened. The detectives' team would have already installed the surveillance equipment. I would act normally. I would give Serena the opportunity to try again. And when she did, when she put the poison in my food or drink, it would be the end of her pretense, the end of the nightmare I still couldn't believe I was living. "Are you ready, Dad?" Miles asked when I came out of the bathroom. In his eyes, I saw worry, but also determination. My son, my protector. Who would have thought the roles would reverse this way? "I am," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "Let's finish this." As we prepared to leave, one question persisted in my mind. When I looked into Serena's eyes again, knowing what she planned to do, what would I see? Would there still be any trace of the woman I fell in love with? Or would the mask she wore for so long have completely fused with her true, cold, calculating face? I didn't know the answer. But one thing was certain. After this day, nothing would ever be the same. And it was with that thought that I got into the car, ready to confront the woman who had transformed my home into a trap, my marriage into a lie, and my love into a weapon against myself. The drive back home was torture. Every mile brought me closer to the confrontation with the truth I still struggled to accept. Miles drove in silence, giving me worried glances now and then. I tried to mentally rehearse what I would say, how I would act normally when I saw Serena, how to look into the eyes of the woman who planned to kill me and pretend nothing had changed. Detective Sterling confirmed that his team had already installed everything. Miles broke the silence. Cameras in the kitchen, the living room, and the bedroom. Microphones, too. They took advantage of the time she was out shopping this morning. I nodded, unable to form a proper response. The reality of the situation still felt like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. "Dad, look at me." Miles pulled the car over at a gas station a few miles outside of Augusta. "Are you sure you want to do this? We can proceed with a formal complaint. Let the police handle everything. You don't have to go back to that house." I looked at my son, seeing in him the child I raised and the man he had become. "I need to, son. I need to look her in the eyes and understand, or at least try to understand. 6 years of my life, Miles. 6 years believing a lie." I took a deep breath, trying to control the emotion rising in my throat. Besides, like the detective said, we need concrete proof. She can deny everything, say the messages were misinterpreted. Miles nodded, resigned. "Okay, Dad. But promise me you'll follow the plan exactly. No improvising, no confronting her ahead of time. And for God's sake, don't eat or drink anything she offers. I promise, son. I didn't come this far to make a fool of myself now." I tried to smile, but my lips barely moved. The weight on my chest was too heavy to allow any expression of lightness. We continued the drive. The plan was simple. I would return home as if I'd just finished a business trip. I would act normally and wait to see if Serena would try to poison me again. The police would be monitoring everything from a surveillance van parked near the house, ready to intervene at the slightest sign of danger. Miles would stay at a nearby hotel, in constant contact with the detectives' team. As we reached the city limits, Miles stopped the car again. "This is where we split up, Dad. Detective Sterling will meet me at the hotel, and we'll monitor everything from there." He hugged me hard, as if afraid it might be the last time. "Be careful. If anything is suspicious, use the code word we agreed on, and the team will come in immediately." "It'll be fine, son," I replied, trying to convey a certainty I was far from feeling. We swapped into my car, which we had left at the hotel in Savannah, and each went our separate ways. I toward the trap I once called home, Miles toward the safety of the hotel, where he would await the outcome. When I parked in front of my house, I stayed in the car for a few minutes, gathering my courage. The house looked the same as always. The garden Serena tended so carefully, the embroidered curtains in the windows, the rocking chair on the porch where we liked to sit in the late afternoon. Everything was the same, yet everything was irreparably different. I took a deep breath, grabbed my bag, and walked to the door. Before I could use the key, the door opened. Serena was there, with a smile that used to warm my heart, but now chilled my soul. "Oh, my love, I've missed you so much," she exclaimed, throwing herself into my arms. Her perfume, which I once loved, now felt suffocating. "Why didn't you answer my calls? I was so worried." I forced a smile, remembering the role I had to play. "Sorry, my flower, the service was terrible out there, and I had so much to sort out. The time just flew by." She took my bag, still smiling, and pulled me inside. "You must be exhausted, old man. Come on, I made those stuffed peppers you love so much for dinner." Her tone was sweet, affectionate, as it had always been. If I hadn't seen the evidence with my own eyes, I would never suspect that such a macabre plan hid behind that smile. I entered the house, trying to act naturally. Everything was spotless. As always, Serena was meticulous about cleaning and organization. On the kitchen table, I saw she had used the embroidered tablecloth we only used for special occasions. 2 plates, wine glasses, candles, a romantic scene that now felt grotesquely ironic. "I'm going to take a shower first, if you don't mind," I said, needing a few minutes alone to compose myself. She nodded, stroking my face, with a tenderness that seemed so genuine, it actually hurt. "Of course, my love. Go on and rest a little. Dinner will be ready in about 20 minutes. She gave me a quick kiss on the lips and returned to the kitchen, humming a song we used to dance to. In the bathroom, I looked in the mirror and saw a man on the verge of collapse. How could I go through with this? How could I have dinner with her, talk normally, pretend everything was fine, while knowing she might be putting poison in my food at that exact moment? The agreement with the detectives team was that I would pretend to eat and drink, but not actually ingest anything. Then I would simulate the first symptoms of poisoning: dizziness, confusion, difficulty breathing. The goal was to make her believe the plan was working, perhaps leading her to reveal more details or contact her accomplice. I took a quick shower, put on clean clothes, and returned to the kitchen. Serena was facing away from me, stirring something on the stove. For a brief moment, the scene seemed so normal, so domestic, that I almost forgot why I was there. Then she turned around, and I saw something in her eyes. A calculating gleam, quickly masked by an affectionate smile. "Sit down, my love. I'll serve you right now." She gestured toward the chair, the same one where I had sat so many times, sharing meals, conversations, and plans for a future that I now knew was an illusion. I sat down, watching her every move. Serena served the stuffed peppers onto my plate first, then onto hers. She opened a bottle of wine and filled our glasses. Her gestures were precise, careful. At some point, She must have added something to my food or drink. I hadn't noticed anything suspicious, but perhaps that was exactly the point. The perfect poison is the one that goes unnoticed. "A toast," she proposed, raising her glass, "to your safe return." The irony of those words almost made me choke. I raised my glass, lightly touching hers. "To our health," I replied, raising the wine to my lips without actually drinking. She took a sip of hers, watching me over the rim of the glass with a look that now seemed predatory. "How was the trip? Did you solve the problem with the supplier?" she asked, starting to eat her peppers with apparent tranquility. "I invented a story about issues with leather arriving in inferior quality, tense meetings, and difficult negotiations." She listened attentively, asking questions at the right moments, seeming genuinely interested. If it weren't for the envelope Miles gave me, I would swear I was sitting across from the loving, attentive wife I'd always known. "You're not eating, honey," she observed after a few minutes. "Didn't you like the peppers? I made them exactly how you like them, with lots of cheese and not too spicy." "They smell wonderful," I replied, forcing a smile. "I'm just savoring the moment. I missed your cooking." I picked up the fork and pretended to take a bite of the pepper, but diverted it at the last second, hiding it in the napkin on my lap, as we had planned. Serena smiled, apparently satisfied. "Eat plenty. You need to regain your energy after that trip." There was something in her tone, a poorly disguised anxiety, that confirmed my worst suspicions. She wanted me to eat. She was watching every bite with special attention. The conversation continued, superficial and routine. We talked about her students, the TV show we were following, the forecast for rain in the coming days. The normality of the conversation brutally contrasted with the abnormality of the situation. There I was pretending to have dinner with a woman who had pretended to love me for years and was now pretending not to be trying to kill me. After about 20 minutes, I began to implement the next phase of the plan. I raised my hand to my forehead, frowning. "I feel a little strange," I murmured, trying to appear confused. Serena's face lit up for a fraction of a second, so fast that a less attentive person wouldn't have noticed. But I saw it. I saw the satisfaction in her eyes, quickly replaced by an expression of concern. "What's wrong, my love? Are you feeling sick?" "I don't know, a sudden dizziness." I let the fork clatter loudly onto the plate. "And my chest feels tight." She got up, coming to my side with a solicitude that now seemed macabre. "It must be travel fatigue, old man. Come on, let me help you to the bedroom." "No, it's not fatigue," I insisted, now simulating difficulty breathing. "It's something different. My heart is racing." I saw the expectant gleam in her eyes again. "It must be your blood pressure. Have you been taking your medications correctly?" Her voice showed concern, but there was an undertone of anticipation that made me nauseous. "Serena," I called out weakly, "call an ambulance." She picked up the phone, but didn't dial. Instead, she sat beside me, stroking my face with a gansness that now felt venomous. "Calm down, my love. It will pass. Breathe deeply." I staggered up, clinging to the table. "Please call. I don't feel well." Her eyes fixed on mine, and for the first time, I clearly saw what was behind the mask. Coldness, calculation, and something more disturbing. Satisfaction. "Sit down, Elijah. It will pass soon." At that moment, any lingering doubts of drain I might have had vanished. The woman in front of me, the woman I had loved for 6 years, was calmly watching me die. Or at least, that's what she believed was happening. "Why?" I managed to ask, as I pretended my legs gave out and I fell to the floor. "Why, Serena?" She knelt beside me, still maintaining the facade of a worried wife. But she no longer bothered to completely hide her true nature. "Don't talk, my love. Conserve your strength. Did you put something in the food?" I asked, looking her directly in the eyes, searching for a reaction. For an instant, I saw surprise in her gaze. Then a subtle smile formed on the corner of her lips. "What nonsense, honey. It's just a temporary discomfort." I closed my eyes, feigning loss of consciousness. I felt her lean closer, checking my pulse on my neck. Then I heard her pick up the phone again. This time, she dialed. "Hello? This is Serena. I think it happened. He came back from his trip 8, and now I think he had a heart attack." Her voice sounded emotional, shaky, perfect for the role of the anguished widow. "Yes, I'm checking his pulse. It's very weak. No, I haven't called an ambulance yet. I thought it was better to talk to you first." There was a pause while she listened to the person on the other end of the line. "I understand. Yes, I'll wait a few more minutes to be sure. Then I'll call emergency services." Another pause. "Yes, the insurance. All settled. $2 million as agreed. Half for you, half for me." If any hope remained in my heart that this was all a terrible misunderstanding, those words completely destroyed it. I remained motionless, feigning unconsciousness, as I heard her walk around the kitchen. "I'll get everything ready. By the time the ambulance arrives, it will be too late." Poor Elijah. His heart just couldn't take it. So predictable for a man his age. Her voice had an almost cheerful tone now, free from the burden of pretense. "After the funeral, we'll meet up in Atlanta, as agreed. A new life awaits us, my love." Her words were like daggers. My love. The same words she said to me, now directed at the man with whom she planned to spend my life insurance money. The same mouth that kissed me now smiled at the prospect of my death. I heard approaching footsteps again. I felt her hand on my face, then on my neck, checking my pulse once more. "Almost," she murmured. "Just a little longer, old man. Soon you'll rest, and so will I." It was at that moment that the front door burst open. "Federal police! Freeze!" shouted an authoritative male voice. I opened my eyes in time to see Serena's face transform from a satisfied smile to an expression of shock, and then to pure terror as several officers invaded the kitchen, weapons drawn. "Serena Cross, you are under arrest for attempted felony murder," announced Detective Sterling, entering the kitchen, followed by Miles, whose face was pale with worry and rage. I stood up, revealing that I was perfectly fine. The look Serena gave me in that moment will forever be etched in my memory. A mix of hate, surprise, and most disturbingly, a kind of resentment, as if I had betrayed her by refusing to die as planned. "Stupid old fool," she hissed, as the officers handcuffed her. "You weren't worth anything alive anyway." Miles rushed to me, hugging me tightly. "It's over, Dad, it's over." But I knew it wasn't over. In a way, the painful process of accepting that the last 6 years of my life had been built on a lie so vast and cruel had just begun. The woman for whom I would have given my life was willing to take mine for money. As I watched Serena being led away by the officers, a tear rolled down my face. It wasn't a tear of relief or even of sadness. It was a tear of farewell, not just to Serena, but to a part of myself. A part that believed in love without reservation, that trusted without question, that saw only the good in people. That part of me died that night, poisoned, not by a substance in my food, but by the betrayal of the woman I loved. In the days that followed Serena's arrest, my house transformed into a strange and hostile place. Every room held memories that were now stained. Every object seemed contaminated by the lie. The side of the bed where she slept remained empty, but her presence still floated in the air like a malevolent ghost. Miles insisted that I stay at his house in Atlanta for a while, but I refused the offer. I need to face this, son. I can't run away from my own home. In reality, part of me hoped that by staying there, I could understand how I had been deceived for so long, how I had missed the signs, how I had mistaken pretense for love. The investigation revealed details that made everything even more painful. Serena's accomplice was Darius, a former student of hers, about 15 years younger than me. They had been having an affair for at least 4 years. 4 years during which she slept in my bed, told me she loved me, and planned our future while secretly dreaming of my death. The plan had been meticulously crafted. Serena convinced me to get a substantial life insurance policy, claiming concern for my well-being. The poison chosen was a hard-to-detect substance that mimicked a heart attack, conveniently for a man my age with a family history of heart issues. They had planned to wait out the policy's waiting period. Afterward, they would meet in Atlanta to start a new life with the money. How could I have been so blind? I asked Detective Sterling during one of the testimonies. He sighed with the expression of someone who had seen many similar stories. Mr. Vinson, you weren't blind. You were betrayed by a person you trusted. It happens more than you imagine. But his words of comfort did little to alleviate the pain and humiliation I felt. At night, alone in that house, full of treacherous memories, I relived every moment of the 6 years of marriage, searching for clues I had ignored, signs of falsehood I hadn't wanted to see. A week after Serena's arrest, I received an unexpected visit from Cousin Bessie, a longtime friend who had always been close to both of us. She showed up at the door with a fresh pot of gumbo, her eyes red from crying. "Child, I still can't believe it," she said, entering the living room with familiarity. "That woman fooled all of us. It wasn't just you." We sat on the porch, the same place where I had so often talked with Serena about our dreams for old age. Bessie poured coffee. I still hesitated to accept food or drink from anyone, a reflex of the recent trauma. "Elijah, I came to tell you something," she began after an uncomfortable silence. "About 3 years ago, I saw Serena with a young man at the market in Savannah. They were holding hands, acting like a couple. She dropped her eyes, embarrassed when they saw me. They let go of hands quickly. Serena introduced the young man as her cousin. She said they were buying things for a sick aunt. I felt my stomach sink. Why didn't you ever tell me, Bessie?" My old friend began to cry. I believed her, Elijah. She came to me afterward. She explained that the young man had problems, that she was just comforting him like an older cousin. She spoke with such sincerity, and I didn't want to cause trouble in your marriage based on suspicion. She took my hands in hers. "Forgive me, dear. I should have told you. I should have suspected." I couldn't feel anger toward Bessie. How could I blame her for being deceived when I, living with Serena daily, hadn't noticed anything? "I have nothing to forgive, cousin. Serena fooled all of us." After Bessie's visit, other people in the community started coming forward with similar stories, small hints that meant nothing in isolation, but together formed a terrifying portrait of betrayal and deceit. The local pharmacist admitted that Serena had asked strange questions about heart medications. A former student mentioned seeing her with a young man at a restaurant in Savannah, acting intimately. The small town, which had once been a comfort, became a torment. Everywhere I went, I felt the eyes on me. Some were pitying, others morbidly curious. The bootmaker, who was almost poisoned by his wife, became the favorite topic of conversation. Some even suggested I must have done something to deserve such treatment, since no one turns into a killer overnight. Serena's trial was scheduled for a few months later. Until then, she would remain in preventive detention, considered a threat to my safety. Her lawyer tried to argue that the whole thing was nothing more than a misunderstanding, that the recorded conversations were about a strong herbal tea she was preparing to help with my health issues. She still denies everything? I asked Detective Sterling, incredulous at the audacity. She denied it until yesterday, he replied with a slight smile. But today we had a breakthrough. Darius, the lover, made a plea bargain. He's going to tell all the details in exchange for a reduced sentence. The detective hesitated, as if weighing whether to continue. Mr. Vinson, he said the original plan was to wait for you to die naturally. It was Serena who decided to speed things up. That revelation hit me like a punch. It wasn't enough that she wanted me dead. She was impatient for it. She wanted to get rid of me as soon as possible to start her new life. So many nights lying beside me, feigning love, while deep down she wished my heart would stop beating. On a particularly difficult afternoon, I decided to visit the shop. I hadn't opened the store since the incident. I didn't have the mind to work. The place was dusty, with dry leather scraps on the workbench where I had left them on my last working day. I picked up an unfinished piece, running my fingers over the stitches I had made. Leatherwork was always my refuge, my way of organizing my thoughts. Maybe it could help me now. I started working slowly, cutting the leather, punching it with the awl, passing the waxed thread through the holes, with the precision that years of practice had given me. Little by little, I felt a calm I hadn't experienced in weeks. There, amidst familiar tools and materials, I was just Elijah, the bootmaker. Not the betrayed man, not the victim of an attempted murder, just a craftsman doing what he knew best. I was so absorbed in the work that I didn't notice Miles' arrival until he spoke. "It's good to see you working again, Dad." I looked up, surprised. "I didn't know you were coming today." He approached, examining the piece I was working on. "I decided to spend the weekend here. I brought some things we need to discuss." During the dinner, he insisted on preparing, while I watched his every move with a distrust I knew was irrational, but couldn't help. Miles placed some documents on the table. The lawyer got access to Serena's bank accounts. We found regular transfers to Darius over the last 3 years, small amounts at first, getting bigger over time. He slid a statement in my direction. "She was siphoning money from our joint account, Dad, a little bit every month, probably hoping you wouldn't notice." Indeed, I hadn't noticed. I trusted her so much that I rarely checked the bank statements. Serena handled the household finances, paid the bills, did the shopping. I just provided the money, happy to have someone take care of that part of domestic life. "There's more," Miles continued hesitantly. "We found this on her phone." He showed me several photos. They were text messages between Serena and Darius, some romantic, some explicit, and many about me. The old man gets more unbearable every day. I can't stand pretending I care about his stories anymore. Just a few more months, and we'll be free, rich and free, my love. Every word was like a stab in the chest. Not only did she not love me, she despised me. All those times I shared my memories, my feelings. She was just tolerating me, counting the days until she could get rid of me. "I don't need to see any more," I said, pushing the phone back to Miles. The nausea I felt wasn't just emotional. My stomach physically churned at those revelations. "I'm sorry, Dad. I thought you should know everything." "And I thank you, son. The truth, however painful, is better than the illusion." That night, after Miles had gone to sleep in the guest room, I sat on the porch, looking at the stars in the Heartland sky. I thought about Aisha, my first wife, Miles's mother. Our marriage had ended, but there was always honesty between us. She never pretended to feel what she didn't feel. She never deceived me. The separation hurt, but it was clean, direct, based on the truth that our paths had diverged. With Serena, everything had been a lie from the beginning. Or was there a time when she truly loved me before that love turned into convenience and then into repulsion? I would never know. The next morning, I made a decision. I'm selling the house, I announced to Miles at breakfast. I can't keep living here with these ghosts. He nodded, understandingly. Where will you go? I don't know yet. Maybe Atlanta to be closer to you, or perhaps another small town where nobody knows my story. I paused, considering something I'd been thinking about for a few days. I'm also thinking of selling the shop. What? But Dad, the shop is your life. It was, son. It was. I looked at my hands, calloused from decades of working leather. But now, it brings me more pain than joy. Every piece reminds me that while I was there working, dedicated to my craft, Serena was, well, you know. Miles's expression softened. I understand, Dad, but don't make permanent decisions during a temporary crisis. Give it time. I smiled at my son, grateful for his wisdom. Since when did you become so sensible, boy? I learned from the best, he replied, placing his hand on mine. In the following weeks, we began organizing the move. I put the house up for sale at a lower than market price to facilitate a quick sale. I didn't care so much about the money. I just wanted to be free of that place and the memories it contained. The shop was more difficult. I ended up deciding not to sell it immediately, but to put it under the management of Devon, my longtime apprentice. He would run the business, and I would receive a percentage of the profits while I decided what to do long term. Miles found a small apartment for me in Atlanta, close to his own. At first, I hesitated. I had never lived in a big city. The noise and hustle scared me, but the idea of starting over in a place where no one knew my story was tempting. One day, while separating what I would take with me and what I would leave behind, I received a call from the lawyer handling my case. Mr. Vinson, we have important news. Serena has agreed to a plea deal. She's going to confess to everything in exchange for a reduction in sentence. I felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. On the one hand, her confession meant I wouldn't have to go through the emotional strain of a long trial. On the other hand, it meant I would soon face her again. I would have to hear the confirmation of everything we discovered from her own mouth. When is the hearing? I asked, my voice firmer than I expected. Next week. You will need to be present. After hanging up, I stared at the moving boxes scattered around the living room. In each one were pieces of my life, carefully packed. Some contained distant memories of Serena that I intended to preserve. Others were objects we shared that I couldn't simply throw away, even knowing that each one was contaminated by falsehood. I picked up a photograph of us, taken during a Juneteenth festival. In it, we were embracing, smiling, dressed for the occasion. She was wearing a beautiful print dress, her hair braided with ribbons, a radiant smile. I was in my best suit, looking at her with evident adoration. The happiness in that image seemed so genuine. Had it all been an act on her part? I placed the photo in a separate box I had designated for things I didn't know what to do with. I couldn't keep it with me, but I couldn't simply throw it in the trash either. Perhaps one day I would be able to look at it without feeling that mix of love, pain, and rage that consumed me. Now, on the eve of the hearing, Miles came to be with me. He was worried about my emotional state. He feared the confrontation with Serena might be devastating. Dad, you don't have to look at her. You can keep your eyes on the judge or on me. No, son, I replied, with a determination that had been growing within me over the past few days. I'm going to look her in the eyes. I need to see the truth. However painful it is, I've lived too long surrounded by lies. The morning of the hearing, I dressed with care, not to impress anyone, but to give myself the dignity I needed to face that moment. I chose my best shirt, the blazer I wore only on special occasions. The county courthouse was a simple building, like everything in Augusta. As I entered the courtroom, I felt all eyes on me. Some faces were familiar, neighbors, friends, the curious. Others were unknown, probably reporters drawn by the sensational nature of the case. When Serena was brought in, handcuffed and escorted by officers, there was a collective murmur in the room. She was thin, pale, very different from the vibrant woman I had known. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away. The judge began the proceedings, explaining the terms of the plea deal she had accepted. She would confess to the crime of attempted felony murder, receiving a reduced sentence of 15 years with the possibility of parole after serving 1/3 of the sentence. When it came time for her confession, Serena stood up, her eyes fixed on the floor. Her voice, once so melodious and confident, now sounded small, almost inaudible. I confessed that I planned to kill Elijah Vinson for financial gain. I maintained an extramarital affair with Darius for 4 years. Together, we planned my husband's death to receive the life insurance money. I attempted to poison my husband on the night of April 12 by placing a toxic substance in his food and drink. The judge interrupted her. Does the defendant confirm that she acted with premeditation, with the intent to kill for base motive, which is financial gain? She nodded, still not looking up. Yes, Your Honor. Does the defendant have anything to say to the victim? Finally, Serena looked up, meeting my gaze. There was no remorse in her eyes, only a kind of bitter resignation. No, Your Honor. I have nothing to say. That moment, that look devoid of any positive emotion, was like the last piece of a puzzle, fitting into place. All the doubt I might still have had about her feelings for me vanished. There was never any love, only interest, calculation, and eventually contempt. The judge asked if I would like to speak. Miles squeezed my arm, a silent gesture of support. I stood up, aware of all the eyes on me. Your Honor, for 6 years I believed I was married to a woman who loved me. I shared my life, my dreams, my home with her. I trusted her completely. I paused, searching for the right words. Today, I understand that it was all a lie, that while I was building a life, she was planning my death. I looked directly at Serena, who now kept her eyes fixed on me. I don't wish this woman ill. I just want to understand. If you didn't love me, why marry me? Why not just leave, as my first wife did? Why choose to take my life instead of just walking out of it? Serena did not answer immediately. The judge intervened, saying she was not obliged to answer, but she raised her hand, indicating she would speak. At first, I didn't plan any of this, she said, her voice stronger. I married for convenience. Yes, you were stable. You had a house, a business. I was tired of struggling alone. I thought I could get used to it, that I would learn to love you. She paused, a bitter smile curving her lips. But then I met Darius. I felt things I never felt with you. And I realized I couldn't stand your presence anymore. Your touch, your voice. Her voice faltered slightly, but she composed herself. I wanted a way out, but I didn't want to leave empty-handed after so much time invested. The insurance seemed like the perfect solution. Her words were like acid, corroding any lingering trace of good memories I might still have had. She not only didn't love me, she despised me to the point of preferring to see me dead rather than simply divorce me. "Thank you for your honesty," I finally said, my voice surprisingly calm. "At least now, at the very end, there is truth between us." I sat back down, feeling as if an enormous weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The truth, however painful, was liberating. There were no more doubts, no more what-ifs, just the crystal clear clarity of knowing exactly what had happened and why. The judge concluded the hearing, formalizing the terms of the deal. Serena was led back to detention, where she would await the official sentencing. As she left the room, she looked at me one last time. There was no remorse in her gaze, no anger, no strong emotion, only a kind of distant recognition, as if looking at a stranger she had once briefly known. Walking out of the courthouse with Miles by my side, I felt strangely light. The sky over Augusta was an intense blue, cloudless. A gentle breeze carried the smell of dry earth and the distant aroma of fresh bread from Mama Josefa's bakery. "How are you feeling, Dad?" Miles asked cautiously. I breathed deeply, feeling the air of the heartland fill my lungs, as if I were waking up from a bad dream. "Like I woke up from a very bad dream, son." I put on my hat, adjusting it against the bright sun. "But I'm awake now, and that's what matters." We started walking toward the car, leaving the courthouse and, symbolically, a painful part of my life behind. I knew the recovery would be long, that the broken trust wouldn't be easily restored. But at that moment, under the blazing southern sun, I felt it was possible that Elijah Vinson, master bootmaker from Augusta, survivor of an unthinkable betrayal, could start over. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I saw it clearly, without the veil of lies that had clouded my vision for so many years. And that, by itself, was a new beginning. The months after Serena's trial passed like a whirlwind. I sold the house in Augusta for less than it was worth, but the relief of getting rid of that place compensated for any financial loss. Every room held memories that now felt poisoned. Every object brought the shadow of a happiness that was never real. The move to Atlanta was more difficult than I imagined. Used to the slow pace of the heartland, the silence of the country nights, and the warm greetings of acquaintances on the streets, I felt lost among tall buildings, constant horns, and the hurried indifference of the capital's inhabitants. The apartment Miles found for me was small but comfortable, located in a quiet neighborhood overlooking a tree-lined square that brought a bit of nature to the urban scene. "You'll get used to it, Dad," Miles assured me when he saw me looking out the window, nostalgic. "Just give it time." Time was exactly what I had plenty of. Now retired, away from the leather shop that had been my livelihood and passion for decades, I found myself facing empty days, hours that dragged on without purpose. The nights were the worst. The silence of the apartment was different from the silence of the country. This was empty. That one was full of life, of crickets chirping, of wind through the leaves. My son, always attentive, noticed my increasing melancholy. "You need to keep busy, Dad. Find something that brings you joy again." I tried various activities. I frequented a senior center near the apartment, where they played dominoes and cards. I made some superficial friendships, but I couldn't truly connect. Whenever someone asked about my former life, about how I ended up in Atlanta, I froze. The shame of having been so cruelly deceived still consumed me. "You have nothing to be ashamed of," declared Cousin Bessie, who came to visit me 3 months after my move. She brought the scent of the country in her clothes, in the gumbo she cooked in my kitchen, in her direct way of speaking. "The shame belongs to her who tricked a good man for money, not you, who had the heart to love." Bessie's words stayed with me. Slowly, I began to see my experience in a different light. It wasn't my fault that I believed in Serena's love. The fault wasn't in my capacity to trust, but in her dishonesty. It was an important distinction that helped lighten the burden I was carrying. One Sunday, walking through Piedmont Park after lunch at Miles's house, I saw a group of artisans selling their work. I stopped to watch an elderly gentleman working with leather, his wrinkled hands shaping the material with the same delicacy I once used in my shop. Something inside me stirred, an awakening, a spark of interest I hadn't felt in months. "Nice work," I commented, approaching him. The man, who must have been close to 70, looked up from the braiding he was doing. "Thank you. You know a bit about leather, don't you?" "I was a bootmaker for over 40 years back in Augusta, Georgia," I replied, unable to suppress a small smile. His eyes lit up. "A bootmaker from the heartland. That's a real trade. These city folk don't know how to appreciate fine leather work." He extended his calloused hand. "Mr. Theodore, a pleasure." "Elijah," I replied, shaking his hand firmly. We talked for almost 2 hours. Mr. Theodore had been a shoemaker in North Carolina before moving to Atlanta after his wife's death. "I couldn't stand living in that house, where every corner reminded me of her," he explained, with words that resonated deeply with me, although for different reasons. He told me he was part of a crafts cooperative, where he taught leatherworking classes to young people from the underserved communities. "It's a way to pass the knowledge on, to feel like my craft won't die with me," he said with evident pride. I returned home that day with the first genuine feeling of hope since discovering Serena's betrayal. The next morning, I called the number Mr. Theodore had given me and asked if I could visit the co-op. The headquarters was a simple warehouse in a working-class neighborhood, divided into several workstations where different artisans practiced their crafts: embroidery, pottery, basket weaving, wood carving, and of course, leatherwork. The students were mostly young people from nearby communities, some referred by social programs, others simply interested in learning a trade. "We need another master for the leather classes," explained Ms. Eleanor, the project coordinator. An energetic woman with white hair tied back in a severe bun. "Theodore can't keep up. Would you be interested?" The question caught me by surprise. I hadn't thought about returning to leatherwork, much less teaching. My craft had always been solitary, developed in the concentrated silence of my shop. The idea of sharing it with others, of transforming the knowledge that was primarily in my hands into words, seemed challenging. "Can I think about it?" I asked, genuinely confused about what I wanted. "Of course," Ms. Eleanor replied without pressure. "Come a few times, observe the classes, see how it works, and then decide." That's what I did. In the following weeks, I started visiting the cooperative 3 times a week. Initially, I just watched, sitting in a corner, seeing Mr. Theodore teach the young people how to cut, shape, and stitch the leather. Slowly, almost without realizing it, I started offering advice, showing techniques I knew. "The stitch will be firmer this way," I'd say, taking the needle from an apprentice's hands. "Look, if you pass the strip through like this, the finish is cleaner." The young people began seeking me out, curious about my experience, eager for knowledge that only decades of practice could offer. Mr. Theodore, far from feeling threatened, seemed relieved to have help. "You have a gift for teaching, Elijah," he commented one afternoon, as we were tidying up the tools after class. You have full wise and patience. You know how to explain without making the student feel foolish. His words took me by surprise. I had never seen myself as a teacher, someone capable of transmitting knowledge. In fact, I had never seen myself as many things that I was now discovering I could be. A month after my first visit to the cooperative, I accepted Ms. Eleanor's invitation. It wasn't a paid job. The cooperative survived on donations and the sale of products made by the students. But that didn't matter. My retirement and the income from the shop, which Devin managed competently, were enough for my simple needs. What I gained there was much more valuable than money. I found purpose, connection, and a sense of continuity that I had lost. Every time I saw the spark of understanding in a young person's eyes when they mastered a difficult technique, every time I received a sincere, "Thank you, Mr. Vinson," I felt something rebuilding inside me. Miles noticed the change. "You look lighter, Dad," he observed during one of our Sunday lunches. "I feel lighter," I confessed, "like I'm useful again." He smiled, understandingly. "You were always useful. You just needed to find a new way to show it." News about Serena arrived occasionally, brought by the lawyer who still handled the legal aspects of the case. She had been transferred to a women's penitentiary in Atlanta where she was serving her sentence. I heard she had earned a degree in literature while incarcerated and was teaching classes to other inmates, making use of her teaching background. The irony did not escape me. Both of us had found a path to redemption in teaching, albeit under radically different circumstances. One day, I received a letter from her. I stared at the envelope for long minutes, unable to decide whether to open it or just throw it away. The handwriting was unmistakably hers, delicate, precise, like everything Serena did, except maybe her moral choices. Finally, with trembling hands, I opened the envelope. The letter was short, straight to the point. "Elijah, I don't expect your forgiveness, nor do I deserve it. I'm writing only to say I regret the suffering I caused. I have no justifications for what I did. I just want you to know that despite everything, there were sincere moments between us, moments when I almost managed to be the person you thought I was. I hope you find peace. Serena." I read the letter several times, trying to understand what I felt. It wasn't anger or sadness. It was a kind of melancholic resignation, an understanding that some wounds never completely heal. We just learn to live with them. I didn't reply to the letter. There was nothing to say, but I kept it in a drawer along with the few photographs and memories I brought from Augusta, not out of nostalgia or residual love, but as a reminder of a lesson harshly learned. Life at the cooperative brought a welcome routine. I woke up early, drank my coffee watching the movement in the square outside the apartment. Then I took the bus to the warehouse. I spent the day there, surrounded by the smell of leather and the lively conversations of the young people. I returned home in the late afternoon, tired but satisfied, with the feeling of a day well lived. One afternoon after class, Mr. Theodore invited me for coffee at the small cafe near the co-op. "I have a project to propose to you," he said, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. He told me about an idea he had been developing with Ms. Eleanor to create a line of premium leather products made by the most advanced students under the supervision of the masters, to be sold in high-end craft stores in tourist areas. "We need someone with your knowledge of saddles and riding gear," he explained. "We want to make bags, wallets, and accessories that incorporate elements of the old Heartland tradition. Authentic, you understand? Not those imitations that tourists usually buy." I was immediately interested in the idea. It was a way to bring a little bit of the country to the city, to preserve traditional techniques by adapting them to new contexts. More than that, it was an opportunity to help these young people transform learning into livelihood. "I'm in," I replied, without hesitation. In the following weeks, we worked intensely on the project. We selected the most promising students, developed designs, and experimented with techniques. I contributed traditional stitching and ornamentation methods that I learned from my father, adapting them for smaller, more contemporary pieces. The first batch of products was a surprising success. The bags, inspired by traditional saddles, with their exposed stitching and characteristic ornamentation, attracted not only tourists looking for authentic souvenirs, but also local customers interested in sustainable, handmade fashion. In a few months, we expanded to 3 points of sale and started receiving custom orders. Seeing my traditional knowledge gain new life, being valued in a context so different from the original, brought a satisfaction I hadn't expected. Even more rewarding was seeing the young apprentices turn into skilled artisans, gaining confidence and financial independence through the craft. One of those young people was Matthew, a 17-year-old from the outskirts of Atlanta, who showed exceptional talent for leatherwork. Shy and reserved at first, he rarely spoke during class, only watching attentively and executing tasks with impressive precision. In time, he began to open up, to ask questions, to suggest his own ideas. "You remind me of my grandfather," he told me one day, as we worked together on a particularly complex piece. He also had those hands that seemed to know the material better than his own head. The comparison touched me. There was a time when I dreamed Miles would follow in my footsteps, that the shop would be passed down from father to son, as it had been with my father before me. But Miles chose another path, and I learned to respect his decision. Now, unexpectedly, I found in Matthew someone to whom I could transmit my knowledge, my love for the craft. Miles, always present and attentive, noticed the special connection I developed with the young man. "Found a successor, Dad?" he asked with an understanding smile during one of our lunches. "Maybe," I replied, pleased with the prospect. "Matthew has a rare talent, hands that know how to listen to the leather, you understand? Hands that respect the material." "I'm happy you found that," Miles said, his voice filled with genuine emotion. "Someone to pass your knowledge on to continue your legacy." A year after moving to Atlanta, I visited Augusta for the first time since leaving. The shop was still running well under Devin's management. It was time to formalize our partnership. He would run the traditional business, while I would focus on the innovative projects with the cooperative in Atlanta. The town seemed smaller than I remembered, more enclosed, as if it had shrunk in my absence. Walking down the familiar streets, I noticed curious glances, whispers as I passed. The story of Serena's betrayal was still remembered, still provoked reactions. I drove past the house that had been ours. The new owners had painted the facade a vibrant yellow, replaced the old wooden windows with aluminum models, and planted different flowers in the front yard. It was simultaneously familiar and strange, like a half-forgotten dream. I sat in the central square, watching the movement, children playing, elderly folks playing dominoes, women talking in small groups. That had been my life for so many decades. Now, it felt like a closed chapter, a story that belonged to someone else. I returned to Atlanta with a sense of closure I hadn't expected to find. The visit to Augusta had shown me that it was possible to look back without being consumed by pain, that the good and bad memories could coexist without one erasing the other. The following months brought significant changes. The co-op's product line expanded. gaining recognition beyond Atlanta. We were invited to participate in craft fairs in Nashville and New Orleans, bringing the work of the young artisans to a national audience. Matthew, now 18, became my official assistant, taking on increasing responsibilities in training the new students. Miles met Camilla, an environmental lawyer working for forest preservation causes in Georgia. Their wedding, in a small ceremony in Piedmont Park, was one of the happiest days of my new life. Seeing him build his own path, finding love and purpose, brought a deep satisfaction that compensated for many of the past hurts. "Do you think you'll ever want to marry again, Dad?" Miles asked me once as we watched the sunset over the city. The question surprised me. I hadn't thought about romance since Serena. The idea of entrusting my heart to someone again seemed distant, almost unthinkable. "I don't know, son," I replied honestly. "Maybe someday. For now, I'm learning to be happy with what I have." And it was true. Slowly, I was rebuilding a life worth living. Not a copy of the previous one, nor an attempt to erase what had happened, but something new, something that incorporated both the joys and the pains of my past. At the cooperative, I became a kind of a father figure to many of the young people. I not only taught crafting techniques, but also listened to their problems, offered advice, and celebrated their achievements. I discovered a capacity for connection within myself that I didn't know I possessed. A talent for listening and understanding that perhaps was always there, just waiting for the opportunity to manifest itself. 2 years after moving to Atlanta, I received some unexpected news. Serena had suffered a stroke in prison. It wasn't severe, but it left her with some lingering effects. Difficulty speaking, partial paralysis on her right side. The information affected me in a way I hadn't expected. I felt neither satisfaction at her misfortune nor fulfilled vengeance, only a melancholic sadness for human fragility, for the way life can change so quickly for any of us. That night, sitting on the terrace of my apartment, looking at the city lights, I reflected on the journey I had taken. The pain of the betrayal would never completely disappear. It was part of my history. It had shaped me in ways I was still discovering, but it was no longer the dominant force in my life. I had found new purpose, new connections, new ways to give and receive love. I remembered something my father used to say about leather work. The secret isn't trying to make the leather. Forget it was once an animal's hide. It's about respecting that memory, working with it, transforming it into something new without denying its origin. Perhaps the same applied to our lives, to our sorrows. It wasn't about forgetting, about pretending the past didn't exist. It was about incorporating it, transforming it, using even the deepest wounds as material to create something new and meaningful. With that thought, I closed my eyes and gave thanks, not for what I had lost, but for what I had found along the way, for the opportunity to start over, for the possibility of discovering that even in my 60s, there was still so much to learn, to feel, to live. The gentle breeze coming from the park carried with it the scent of earth and possibilities. I breathed deeply, filling my lungs with the air of my new life, my second chance. The past was there, intact in its joys and sorrows. But the future was still being written, one day at a time, one stitch after another, like good leather work that improves and gains character with age. It has now been 5 years since I opened that envelope and discovered my wife was planning to kill me. 5 years of rebuilding, learning, and surprisingly, joy. Life has those quirks. Sometimes you have to almost die to truly start living. The Crafts Cooperative became my second home. From a late-starting apprentice, I became a respected master. The young people affectionately call me Pops Leather, a title I wear with more pride than any other. Matthew, that shy young man who reminded me of my father, now runs his own workshop, teaching other young people. The seed we planted bore fruit beyond what we imagined. Miles and Camilla gave me a granddaughter, little Grace, who at 3 years old already shows interest in my tools. "Let her be, Dad," Miles says when I try to gently move her away from the leather scraps. That's the bootmaker's blood running through her veins. On sunny Sundays, we take Grace to the park, and watching her run on the lawn brings me a happiness I thought I would never feel again. Serena is serving her sentence, with parole scheduled for 2 years from now. I heard she earned a degree in literature during her confinement and teaches classes to other inmates. I harbor no hatred for her. Anger is too heavy a burden to carry in old age. What happened between us is now just a story I sometimes tell when someone asks why a bootmaker from the country ended up in Atlanta. As for me, I learned that life is like the leather I worked with my whole life, resilient and flexible, marked by scars that tell stories, and in time, it acquires a beauty all its own that only authentic things possess. Every wrinkle on my face, every mark on my aged hands tells a part of my journey. And to my surprise, I found space for a new love. I met Naomi at a craft event, a widow from the Carolinas who makes beautiful sweetgrass baskets. "We're two stubborn artisans," she laughs, when our opinions diverge. "We haven't gotten married. At this stage of life, we don't need papers to confirm what we feel. But we share Sundays, confidences, comfortable silences, and a mutual respect that only maturity can bring. And sometimes I still dream of the heartland, of the smell of damp earth after the first rain, of the sound of tools in the shop. They are good dreams now, dreams that no longer wake me with that sharp pain of loss. Augusta will always be a part of me, just as the hands that learn to shape leather are still capable of creating beauty. The most important lesson I learned is that it's never too late to start over. That betrayal can break your heart, but it doesn't have to break your spirit. That sometimes you have to walk through the darkness to find a brighter light on the other side. Today, at 73 years old, I look back and see that the envelope that seemed to contain only death actually brought me life, a life I never would have known if I had continued in that existence of lies. An authentic life, with its joys and challenges, but above all, a true one. If this story of starting over touched your heart, please drop a like to brighten this old craftsman's day. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my next life stories. And tell me one little thing in the comments. Where are you watching this video from? And what time is it right now? Have you ever had to start your life over from scratch? It makes this old man very happy to know who's on the other side listening to me, and what time of your day you took a moment to hear my tale. A big, tight hug, the size of my heart. God bless.